Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of the Mandatory Live Post Fight Show. Remember, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. Lots to get into. We just saw earlier on the co-main, we saw Arnold Barboza Jr. and Jose Ramirez. We are going to get into all of that. And before we do, remember we're also on the audio side. So if you got a couple of minutes, leave a rate and review. Give us a 5-star because that helps the channel grow. Why wouldn't you? But we can't skip the co-main and go. I mean, we can't skip the main event, Bryan. What we just saw, Zurdo gets it done against Billiam-Smith in a fight where Zurdo was down at one point in this fight. What were your thoughts?
It wasn't looking good for him early. Chris Billiam-Smith won. I thought he dominated the first round, and it was a very fun fight. I didn't think I was gonna like I was really like locked in the entire time. Maybe it's because the cruiserweight division, I was kind of like, man, but Zurdo Ramirez has put on great fights for a while, and Chris Billiam-Smith, has drawn a lot of excitement. So I was glad to see the cruiserweight division sort of get the spotlight, even though I'm not going to shit on the event yet. I'm going to save it for the co-main. But I think Zurdo Ramirez, I mean, I wonder what is the Jairo Pataya fight going to be next, because he seems to be the guy in the cruiserweight division, and this is a very easy fight to make promotionally. I mean, both have ties to the whole Riyadh shit, and I think that Chris Billiam-Smith put forth a good showing in a loss. So I'd be curious to see what happens from there, because I mean, he came in, he was champion. That was a good fight. It's not the main fight that you and I particularly were interested in. We're going to talk about Arnold Barboza and Jose Ramirez in a second, but I thought this was a good, fun main event.
He was struggling, and Chris Billiam-Smith, sorry, my mic was muted there for a moment, but I thought at the beginning of this fight, Zurdo didn't look good. I didn't like his game plan at all. I thought Chris Billiam-Smith fought his ass off in this fight. Let's give him some major props. And for Zurdo, you kind of wonder what's next for him, because when you take a look at the cruiserweight division, there are some names, but Opataya to me is the name that I want to see him fight next. I think that's a massive fight. And I don't think that's a layup for a guy like Zurdo that just struggled against Chris Billiam-Smith.
I think he's an underdog.
But I think a lot of people might put money on him too for this fight.
Probably, yeah.
I don't think the odds are going to be too wide for that fight, Bryan. If you had to set the lines for that fight, how would you set it?
Opataya minus 150, something like that. Because I feel like if I do that, I'll get enough action on Opataya, and then it'll bounce back to kind of like what happened with Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano. By the way, this is how you know we're not casuals, because doing a show after this, after doing a show after Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, that shit, if you missed the show last night, go back and check it out, because we went through the whole Mike Tyson, Jake Paul, Amanda Serrano, Katie Taylor ordeal. And we touched on Mario Barrios a little bit and Abel Ramos in their draw.
That was a great fight. That was one of the most solid fights on that card that we didn't really get to talk about too much, but
yeah,
very, very solid fight.
I think Jairo Pataya and Gilberto Ramirez probably make that would be the biggest fight in the cruiserweight division since Alexander Usyk was in it.
Yeah,
at least, which has been a few years now. So I think, and this is something that you could try to make it an event, and then what inevitably people will do, and this has been happening to Jairo Pataya already, people are going to wonder, okay, now that you've won X amount of cruiserweight titles, when are you going to make the jump to the heavyweight division? For Zurdo Ramirez, it's going to be interesting if he were to do that at any point, because we remember him from his days as light heavyweight champion. So that's not a small thing. I'm not going to rush either of these guys to the heavyweight division, but what I would say is, if they do make this fight, let's say in the spring or summer of next year, Opataya, Ramirez, the winner jumping to the heavyweight division would be a lot of fun, especially considering that the heavyweight division feels very wide open right now.
Really? That's interesting to me that you do say that. For the cruiserweight division,
can I explain why?
Yeah, of course.
Real quick, just because Usyk Fury 2, if Usyk wins again, Fury has to move down a rung. Anthony Joshua just got knocked out again. Daniel Dubois is not unbeatable as a champion. He's good. He's really good, and we gave him his props. But like a lot of people in the heavyweight division, there's no one that feels indestructible outside of the top two guys who may only be good enough to lose to each other, so to speak. Like I don't think Usyk. I don't think I'm picking anyone to beat Usyk. I don't think I'm picking anyone to beat Fury other than each other, right?
But that's why I don't think it's wide open.
But they're older.
They are older, but it's going to take time, which is why it's like I wouldn't rush. If I'm Opataya, I wouldn't rush there. If I'm
How
Gilberto
old is
Ramirez,
Child?
I
How
wouldn't
old
rush
is
there. You know what I
Well,
mean? Because
Ramirez doesn't have like a ton of like. I mean, he's
no,
gotten a lot
because
of fights.
what I was just about to say before you cut me off is like it's
Ooh,
either he fights Opataya, yeah, because you said something and you're like, can I answer? You should have just went for it. You know what I mean? You should have just
Zerto's
ran with your
33,
thought.
so this probably doesn't apply to him as much. It's really an
That's
Opataya question.
that's what I mean. But I think also for Zerto, he could like. I don't think this fight would happen. But what's going on with Bodu Jack?
I mean, all due respect. I mean, isn't he? He's a champion in recess right now,
He
is he not?
is, he is, but he's still a name up there. So if we don't get Zerto and Opataya, I think that is an interesting fight that can happen. But I think Opataya Zerto happens. I wouldn't rush either of them to get into the heavyweight division because I still think that's run by Usyk and Fury. I still think Anthony Joshua could beat either of those guys. I don't think it's over for Anthony Joshua just yet. I think he still
Huh.
has a lot to prove.
Okay.
But I think there's names in this heavyweight division that still ring a bell. So it's really interesting to see what's going to happen with it. But I don't think Opataya just goes in there and starts beating everybody.
Who wins in a fight between Zhilei Zhang and Anthony Joshua right now?
You know me, I like Zhilei Zhang.
Okay. It's
But
just
he tires out after the 7th round and he didn't look good in his last fight.
I don't know if I don't think Anthony Joshua's done, but I mean, like
People are saying he should hang it up at this point.
there are
People are saying that.
he has nothing left to prove. There are a lot of guys in the heavyweight division who will touch that chin. Badu Jack hasn't fought in almost 2 years, and he's 41 years old. So he's probably not somebody that like I don't even know if he's going to continue fighting. Maybe he is.
Yeah.
He did win a title last time out. But yeah, I mean, we let's get to some comments so that we can move on to Barboza and Ramirez, honestly, because that's what we really want to talk about. But I mean, cruiserweight division's in a pretty healthy state at the top of it, at least. And you got
Yeah,
some other
it's not
guys
the
coming
most
up. Like,
interesting though. Like, let's be serious. It's not the most interesting division, and even when I look at it, there's 2 names, and we just mentioned them: Zerto and Opataya.
don't get me started on Bridgerweight.
Oh, no, we don't need
I
to do
can't.
that. No, we don't want the time to do that. But yeah, let's get to some comments.
IMPK asks you, is that a Seattle Mariners hat?
So it's a kill the hype hat, but it is the Seattle Mariners logo flipped upside down. They're like the originator of the upside down logos. But yes, it's a Seattle hat.
That's not. Maybe I'm not cultured as far as your hat goes, but
yeah, you got to get with the culture. It's
okay.
they're the creators of the upside down logo. A lot of people try to imitate them, but it's a wavy hat.
Certain somebody formerly from the Joe Budden podcast who would probably wear this hat also.
Yeah.
Tony Yayo. Is Jao Posada next for Gilberto? We hope so. Osman 3001. I am a boxing casual. Welcome. We welcome all. But I watch UFC every weekend. That being said, who do you got tonight between Stipe and John Jones?
I don't ever go against John Jones.
Yeah.
It's not
John
happening.
Jones. John Jones actually have a parlay. Katie Taylor by decision, which the first leg is good so far. Charles Oliveira to win by knockout or submission, double chance. And then John Jones knockout or submission, double chance, which is plus, I forget what it was, but it was good odds.
By the way, has anyone seen The Cage on Netflix?
No. What is that?
It's dope. It's dope. It's about a young guy that's like trying to be an MMA fighter. And there's a bunch of like former UFC guys, Hall of Famers in it, like GSP, John Jones. It's actually dope. 8 episodes. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. Like if you're, you know what's funny? I went to a party and you know how you like on the red cup, you got to write down your name.
Yeah.
I just kept on doing that S logo.
Yeah.
So everyone knew it was.
I can't do the S logo like that. All right, Al the Pal tosses it to the next segment. Glad Barboza won. Hopefully the doors finally open. Okay, let's talk about 140 because Shantelle, this is your fight. You especially, like me also, but you especially for almost 2 years. We've been doing the show for close to 2 years. So 2-year anniversary is gonna be in like March or February. I should probably know that. Regardless,
Get with the program, man.
you've
No, I'm playing, man.
you've been looking forward to this fight. Arnold Barboza outboxes Jose Ramirez.
Wow.
Unanimous decision, did not get robbed like I kind of feared he would. Um, what were your thoughts on this? Because I want you to talk first. And how did you score it also?
So I had it 96-94 in favor for Arnold Barboza
Oh,
Jr. Going into the fight, I thought it could be extremely close in terms of possibly being a majority decision, a split decision, or even a draw. I thought it was a really close fight, but I think Barboza did enough to win the fight, and I had him winning 96-94. I also thought that Jose Ramirez didn't let his hands go enough. I thought Arnold Barboza fought a beautiful fight. He was moving around the ring well. He didn't let Jose Ramirez cut off the ring. And despite the fact that Jose Ramirez was trying to control the pace and Arnold Barboza used his jab really well, he counterpunched really well. There were so many things that he did well in this fight. And I thought it was a great performance by him, arguably his best performance of his career. And Jose Ramirez on the other end, I don't think he looked like Jose Ramirez. He was doing the things that Jose Ramirez does, but he wasn't letting his hands go. So that work rate wasn't the same. But Arnold Barboza Jr. boxed him beautifully. Like that was the best game plan that he could have had. I know a lot of people were saying, well, I saw some comments on X that it wasn't the most entertaining fight. I love this fight. I thought it was a dope fight because tactically, as a technician, Arnold Barboza did his thing. And then Jose Ramirez, he's going to bring that offense and come forward. And, some people might want to see a knockout. Some people might want to see more of a work rate. You usually get that with Jose Ramirez, not in this particular fight. But I thought the fight was dope, Bryan. And I don't understand why people didn't enjoy it or what they expected more from it because Arnold Barboza is a tactician, right? It wasn't like Teofimo Lopez and Jermaine Ortiz. Like that was a fight that could put you to sleep, right? That wasn't this fight. So I don't understand where that's coming from. But I love this fight. As for the crowd, they sucked. This fight should have been in
that's
Cali. It
that's
should
my
have should have
bag.
been on the West Coast. It
That's
should
my
have been in
bag.
Fresno. Should have been in
Yep.
LA.
Yep.
I would have been okay with Arizona because the fans are going to show out in
Yep.
Arizona. All the Hispanic people on the West Coast are going to go to Arizona travel. It's not that far of a drive from LA. Or do it in Vegas,
Or Vegas. Yep. That's the other
right?
spot.
So I have no idea why it was in Saudi. The crowd was terrible. I was louder on my couch than they were. I understand that they did it for the bag. And shout out to Arnold Barboza Jr. too, because like post fight, he talked about why it wasn't a title eliminator. And I'm not mad at that. He's like, yo, man, I did it for my kids. you gotta be cool with and respect that he said that. Hopefully he gets a title shot. We are gonna talk about what's next. He did mention somebody in the post-fight interview, but those were my thoughts. Like I had Barboza winning going into it. I did say it could be a draw, or I thought Jose Ramirez might win, but Arnold Barboza in the biggest moment of his life, in the biggest fight of his career, he got it done. And it was a great performance against a very, very good Jose Ramirez. And we're going to talk about what's next for him as well. But Bryan, your thoughts? I know you had a little bit of a rant about Latino night as well.
First of all, Arnold Barboza by decision plus 320. Catch that one. I told you I was going to wait till right before the opening bell. And right before the opening bell, Arnold Barboza by decision was the play. I don't know. Just we went back to our conversation about how much he wanted this fight, and not just you and I, our conversation, but our conversation with him. So okay, I'm gonna start with Latino night because this was stupid, but money and the Saudis, trying to just sports wash everybody, and they're doing so successfully because everybody is literally bowing at the Saudis in boxing right now. But to have Latino night, and Oscar de la Hoya promoted this too, to have Latino night on a Saturday afternoon in Saudi Arabia, where your co-feature is two Mexicans from Cali fighting each other in Saudi Arabia, it's bad business. It's stupid. It's weird. That's why for the fight, which I saw some people say online, it was boring as well. It was a good fight. It was a clean boxing match. It was a good tactical boxing match that should have been on the West Coast of the United States, where people would have gave a shit about the fight because both of those guys would be hometown, home state type of fight where you would have some action and things of that nature, and the crowd would actually be invested instead of people just showing up just to show up because they have the money and they could just show up. Like nobody gave a fuck about that fight, which is unfortunate because I thought it was a good fight and a fight that Arnold Barboza fought very well. Like we were talking about it, like he needed to bounce back after his last performance where it looked like he got a gift, and he comes back and he beats Jose Ramirez in a fight that he's wanted for years, a former unified champion. I thought that he potentially was going to get robbed, but what he was doing really well was just boxing. He was boxing from the outside, like we talked about. He was using the ring, he was jabbing. His timing was so good. And he was also more active with his hands. He threw a lot more than Jose Ramirez. You were talking about Jose Ramirez not wanting to let his hands go. And I think part of it was he couldn't figure out how, because it's like he was thinking in there and saying, he's like, all right, cool. I'm going to throw the overhand right. I'm going to come back with the left, sort of shove a hook to the body. And right before he does that, jab to the face. Like as soon as he opens up a little bit. Arnold Barboza really was studying. He was really in the gym. He gave credit to his coach after the fact. You know what I mean? He was shouting out his pops. Like he really deserved that outcome given how he fought. I also had it 96, 94. I felt like it could have easily been 97, 93, which he did get on at least one scorecard, which I thought was perfectly fine. Jose Ramirez just doesn't look like the same dude. And yeah, ultimately, like Latino night in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's just the sport in a nutshell. Like, it's just who got money? Okay, fine, we'll do this over there. I don't like, look, we are not a monolith. You know what I mean? Like Puerto Ricans are not Mexicans, are not Venezuelans, are not Dominicans, are not Cubans, are not Haitians, are not Panamanians, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know how many of us are in Saudi Arabia. I'll be honest with you. Like maybe there's an influx that I don't know about, but I don't know how many of us like are out there that would have been like watching this fight. Like that should have been in California. They dropped the ball with that, but boxing drops the ball with a lot of shit. But it was a great fight, great performance from Arnold Barboza, who now shakes shit up at 140 and is still number one contender according to the WBO. We'll see if Teofimo Lopez gives him a title shot.
And that was kind of my next question, Bryan. He did say, and he did mention Teofimo Lopez when he was on our show early on when we first started this show. He mentioned Teofimo Lopez. There was some back and forth between Teo's dad, Arnold's dad. That was going on. That fight never ended up happening. And now Arnold Barboza is in a situation where we're taking a look at the 140-pound division, and hopefully he gets that title shot. It should be Teofimo Lopez. I think that's the most interesting fight that could happen. But Bryan, if Teo doesn't want to sign that contract to fight Arnold Barboza Jr., because let's be serious, if Arnold Barboza Jr. fights like that and Teofimo Lopez doesn't fight like Teofimo Lopez, Arnold could possibly win that fight.
Remember when Teofimo Lopez fought Sandor Martin and a lot of people thought he lost that fight? And he basically won. I had him winning by 8 points, and that was with the knockdown that he suffered, but I could have seen it the other way. Like it wouldn't have been crazy to me if he lost that fight. Teofimo Lopez, since moving to 140, Tony Ayo, I'm gonna get to that comment in a second because that's a really good one. We're gonna put that up. And drop comments because we're talking about 140 now. Give us your thoughts on that weight class and how Arnold Barboza potentially fits. Now, he fought Pedro Campa, this being Teofimo Lopez. So, great showing against somebody he should have beaten. There's your debut. Sandor Martin, not a great performance. Josh Taylor, excellent performance. That's honestly maybe, like, other than the Lomachenko fight, and some would say even including that one, maybe his best performance. But with the benefit of hindsight, it's like, all right, is Josh Taylor actually kind of like, was the decline already happening? He had over a year-long
I'm not
layoff
going to
before
lie to
that.
you. I
Yeah.
don't want to take anything away from Teo because, like, he did work against Josh Taylor, but there's clearly a decline.
Josh Taylor's is also not your favorite fighter.
No, but I gave him props. Like when he fought Jose Ramirez, dropped Jose Ramirez. Like you got to understand, like I am a massive Jose Ramirez fan. And I also got love for Arnold Barboza Jr. He's one of my favorite fighters as well. Like people don't like him. I like the way that he fights. And I think he's underrated in this division. But this was a fight that was really sad for me. And I was telling Bryan on WhatsApp, I was like, yo, I'm hella happy for Arnold, but I'm like sad because Jose Ramirez lost. Like I didn't know how to feel after this fight. But listen, he's fairly like he destroyed Jose Ramirez, but that was a fight where I didn't even think Jose Ramirez looked like himself in that Josh Taylor fight. And there was a long layoff. Let's also keep in mind that Jose Ramirez has not been very active. And I
Yeah.
think that was also an issue in this fight, Bryan.
Going back to it, because Jose Ramirez was like, I mean, look, he almost was undisputed. He was almost undisputed at this weight class. This is why we keep talking about this weight class being so goddamn chaotic. Um, like Arnold Barboza gets this win. Um, and I think that the fight with Teofimo Lopez is interesting. Just to wrap up the Teofimo Lopez point, but he's had 5 fights in this weight class, so he's only impressed in 2 of them. Josh Taylor, Pedro Campa. Sandor Martini could have lost. Jermaine Ortiz, I think a lot of people, I don't know if people thought he could have lost that fight necessarily, but a lot of people were just
I don't
underwhelmed.
think that fight was his fault either. Like Jermaine Ortiz did what Jermaine Ortiz's game plan was. That
But
wasn't his fault.
but cut off the ring better. Like it seems to be a problem with Teofimo Lopez. And then Steve Claggett, like that one probably shouldn't have gone 12. Steve Claggett is very
If you
tough.
talk to my fellow Canadians, they will tell you that Steve Claggett is a very, very tricky fighter, and they weren't surprised that it went that way. Personally, I was,
Hmm.
but they weren't surprised. Like talking to a lot of Canadians about Steve Claggett fighting Teofimo Lopez, that was a fight where a lot of them who've seen a lot of Steve Claggett thought that's the way it would go. Like, I think the biggest question here, Bryan, is because I was at that Pedro Campa fight in Vegas a
That's
couple of
right.
years ago.
Yeah. I was at the
Has
Josh Taylor one.
has Teofimo Lopez has his power translated to 140? Because we haven't seen it. He had a chance to knock out or TKO Josh Taylor. It wasn't done. Keep in mind that that hasn't happened to Josh Taylor ever in his career. But I mean, this is not a post-fight show about Teofimo Lopez, but has his power translated? Like, I don't know if it has. I think that's a serious question that we have to start asking.
He has 1 stoppage win at 140. And the 1 stoppage, this isn't counting. I mean, even if you did want to count a fight at 140 or a couple fights at 140 early on, like you can, but that's not relevant to this. Since becoming a 140 fighter, he has 1 stoppage, and that was against Pedro Campa. I don't think he even knocked him down until the 7th round. And he didn't drop Sandor Martini, got dropped. He didn't drop Josh Taylor. He almost did. And obviously did not against Steve Claggett and Jermaine Ortiz. And I think he could have. The thing with the Steve Claggett fight is like, for me, it's not going to the cars as much as is. I feel like he could have done a good deal more than he did and kind of just coasted. And that was the thing that was disappointing, right? So to bring this back to Arnold Barboza, because whether or not the power translates is important, because Arnold Barboza is like, it's not somebody you're just going to put away. Granted, he's not like a big power puncher, but there's some sting on those jabs and those straights, and he has the movement. Like
And
he's,
he took some power shots from Jose Ramirez. Like, Jose Ramirez got power
yeah.
and he took it well. Like, Arnold's showing that he's got a little bit of a chin.
The reason Teofimo probably doesn't want to take this fight is because, like, is it a money fight for him? No, not necessarily. It's a mandatory title defense against a guy who's not a huge name, who doesn't have finishing ability, and who's not gonna like. They're gonna probably do like a theater together, you know. But at the same time, Arnold Barboza is also a dangerous opponent, because Arnold Barboza could do what Jermaine Ortiz did with more offense. He can do what Sandor Martin did with more offense. You know, he has a better jab. You could argue than both of those guys. Like, you could convincingly argue that. He's going to use the ring. He's going to use movement. Like, there's a real world where, like, those type of elements that Teofimo Lopez struggles with, like, that could be a stylistic nightmare for him if he fights Arnold Barboza. He should win this fight. Like, Teofimo Lopez, if they were to fight, Teofimo Lopez is talented. He should beat anybody at 140, basically. But
Yeah.
Arnold Barboza could definitely win that fight, because Teofimo Lopez struggles with movement and struggles with cutting off the ring, and his power hasn't translated to 140 in the same way.
And it's like, what Teofimo Lopez are we going to get? Because I do believe he is the best at 140. Let me just say that right away. But I do think Arnold Barboza causes him some problems in anybody in the 140-pound division. And I also think when we take a look at the top 5, like, Arnold is there in conversation. Like, people are not going to give him his props because for some reason they just don't like his style. They haven't believed in him since his top rank run, but he's proven himself. He's 31-0. The guy needs a title shot. He just took care of Jose Ramirez, a former champion who was almost undisputed. he needs a title shot. But I do think that the one fight that Teofimo Lopez is looking at is him and Devin Haney, because that makes him the most money. And I think Teofimo Lopez wants those money fights instead.
Because he also knows that Devin Haney is now chinny. Also, that's the other piece of it. Like the Devin Haney fight, I think he might perceive it as even easier than the Arnold Barboza one now post Ryan Garcia, which I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. But
that's disrespecting Devin Haney. I'm not gonna lie, because
yeah,
I still think Devin Haney can beat anybody in this division, man.
I think that's how Teofimo would see it, though. Like I think people are super down on Devin Haney, and for me, it's like I need to see what he looks like post Ryan Garcia. Like if he fights in his next fight, Sandor Martin, which has been rumored in the past, I don't know if it's going to happen now, but if he fights Sandor Martin and Sandor Martin like rocks him with a straight left in the second round, a straight left that doesn't even look that crazy, or a hook or something along those lines, then that would make me think of what happened.
Another fight that I would be hella down for, if the rematch with Jose Valenzuela and Isaac Cruz doesn't happen, is give Arnold Barboza and Jose Valenzuela a shot to fight each other, because they could do that again in Cali.
Yeah, they'd probably do that in Saudi Arabia instead.
Oh my god, if they do it in Saudi, I'm gonna be mad. Like, stop taking away these fights from the West Coast. But I think that's a title fight for Arnold Barboza. And let's be serious, like Jack Catterall deserves a title shot too.
Let's go to Todiello, who throws a curveball and says, give Barboza Devin Haney. Devin Haney's still the champion in recess, technically.
The only issue with that is, Brian, I don't know if that makes any money. I don't know if, like, I think Teofimo Lopez and Barboza can make money. And I even think they could, I know Teo is a Florida guy, Miami guy, Brooklyn guy, whatever he wants to claim. But I think Teo could do that fight in Vegas or even on the West Coast and it be successful.
Sure.
I think so. I think it could be successful. And I think they can make some money out of it, because there was some back and forth between the camps. Like a couple of years ago when Arnold was on our show, there was talk about that. When Teo was, at Top Rank, Arnold was at Top Rank. Like, that was a fight that was kind of brewing and it didn't happen. And there was back and forth. They could sell it. But Barboza and Devin Haney, like two really nice fellas. Like, they're not gonna, like, they're just like the nicest guys of all time. Like, Devin's a nice kid. He acts like that for the cameras, but you can tell that he's a nice kid, man.
You say this all the time.
He looks like a sweet boy. That listens to his dad, that loves his grandma. Like, I'm being honest, like he just seems like a very nice kid, and that's not like me hating on him. He's a nice dude, and you can tell.
I know, but
you know what I mean?
No, like I can't.
It's like he acts it up for the cameras, and I don't buy it. Like, I never buy it from Devin, because you can tell he has like a genuine soul. But like, and Arnold Barboza is like the nicest guy too. Like, awesome. That fight does not make any money. Yeah, it makes money in Saudi.
By the way, they're both West Coast guys. Like, you could put that in the Bay.
Oh yeah,
you could do that.
I would go to that fight if it was in the Bay.
Sure.
There's no way I could miss that fight. If it's in the Bay.
140, and we're gonna revisit the chaos again. We literally just did this last week because Subriel Matias is back on the map. And we talked about it recently because Jack Catterall beat Regis Prograis. Like, so we're not going to go through the whole thing now. By the way, Arnold Barboza now ranked higher than Regis Prograis.
Makes sense though. Like,
no, that's a turn of events, because remember when we were talking to both of them, like Regis didn't seem too interested in the Arnold Barboza fight when Arnold Barboza wanted that fight the most, and things flip over just a year and a half. So,
and that was before his fight in New Orleans with Danielito Zorrilla.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, yo, I think Regis is like the guy, and like things have changed drastically.
Yeah.
But this division it's up in the air, man. Like, no one's that clear cut. I think we both agree it's Teo, but anything can happen in this division.
All it took was two fights, because Regis had the fight against Danielito, and then he had the fight against Devin Haney, where he just looked bad. We have Sandor Martin ranked number 1 by the WBC, by the way. And I wonder what's going to happen there, because Alberto Puello is the champion and Devin Haney is champion in recess. And I have no idea what's going to happen with that. WBA is Valenzuela. Is he going to get Isaac Cruz? Liam Paro, the IBF, he's going to defend against Richardson Hitchens in a few weeks. We want to do that. That would probably be our next post-fight live. Yes. We're going to have a live show this week, but our next post-fight live will probably be likely be on December 7th because it's not just that card, but there's like a lot of shit going on that day. Romacy Ramirez is fighting Rafael Espinoza for the second time, as is Navarrete, Emmanuel Navarrete, and Oscar Valdez. And Teofimo Lopez, we mentioned, is WBO, and then you have like Arnold Barboza's number one here, and Jack Catterall is actually waiting around for a title shot now. Like, it feels like Jack Catterall might get the Liam Paro Richardson Hitchens winner.
I hope so. He deserves it.
Yeah,
and that's me, like, not a Jack Catterall fan. If you watch the show, he deserves a title shot, and I think him and Liam Paro would be a war. I would take Liam Paro.
maybe I don't know if it'll be a war. I think it'll be a fun boxing match. But
I think they'll make it interesting.
I'm gonna keep saying this though. Richardson Hitchens could win that fight against Liam Paro. Like I think people might be sleeping on him a little bit.
But I think if he does, people are gonna be like, "Yo, that was the most boring fight of all time." Like, people are gonna hate on that. I do want to ask you a question, Bryan.
Yes.
Is Alberto Puello the most underrated champion and fighter in the 140-pound division?
I think he's the only champion in this division that's underrated, period. Maybe Liam Paro might be a little bit, but like, let's see him against Hitchens first. If he dominates the Richardson Hitchens fight, then I'll be like, all right, Liam Paro's got to be like top something in this division. Give him not Devin Haney, but give him Teofimo Lopez in a unification, or Devin Haney, whatever. Like, give him something like that.
You know what's really interesting about that? And maybe I'm putting too much weight on this, but I think I have a reason to. I still think this year, and I don't know if this is a hot take, but this is my take. Liam Paro going into Puerto Rico and beating Subriel Matias is still one of the best wins this year in boxing.
It is.
He did it in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And he did it convincingly.
Yeah.
And Subriel Matias was that guy that everyone's like, yo, the boogeyman, no one wanted to fight him.
Matchroom cut him. Matchroom cut him after that.
And listen, he came back recently, had a great finish. So we're not talking about Subriel, but he's there. And I still think it was one of the best wins. And that's why I would take Liam Paro over a lot of guys. I think he beats Hitchens. I think Hitchens has a chance. But I also think he beats Jack Catterall because I put so much weight on that win, Bryan.
And someone mentioned Lindolfo Delgado last week. Let's mention him again because he's in this mix too. Look, Arnold Barboza was ranked number 4 by the IBF prior to this fight. Number 1 is Richardson Hitchens, who's getting the title shot. So he and Liam Paro, one of them is going to drop down a few spots after the fight, assuming it's not a draw, which could very well happen, to be honest. They don't have a number 2 ranked right now. It's just not rated. So there's your potential eliminator right there. Like, Jack Catterall, Arnold Barboza could both slide up because Jack Catterall is 3, Arnold Barboza is 4, Hitchens is 1. There's not a 2. The IBF, if they want to, you could just have the winner between Liam Paro. Their mandatory could be Jack Catterall or Arnold Barboza. You could have Catterall, Arnold Barboza fight each other in an eliminator, and there's your number 1 contender. Like, if neither of them are going to get a title shot next.
That's the thing. And this is my, I have my mic on mute again. I'm so sorry. We've been doing too many post-fight shows, but I will say that's the only thing that will bother me is if we have to wait a year for Arnold Barboza to get that title shot. Like, I don't want Catterall to wait. I don't want Barboza to wait. So the only way I'll be cool with Arnold Barboza and Jack Catterall fighting, even though I both believe they should get title shots next, is if the wait is too long.
Yeah.
Like, if it's more than 6 months, let them fight, and whoever wins gets the winner of Liam Paro and Hitchens. Let's just say that.
The right move, with air quotes, it would be Paro, Hitchens winner, Catterall is the number 1 contender, Barboza gets Teofimo Lopez. Because I don't know what Teofimo Lopez is gonna, like, what else is he gonna do? Other than Devin Haney, but it doesn't. I don't know if I'm Devin Haney. That's not my first fight back.
For me, it's I don't think Devin Haney wants to do that, but they'll both make bread off of it, and I think Devin has a really good chance to beat Teo still. I know a lot of people are down on him, but I think he can beat anybody in this division still. We'll see how he is after that Ryan Garcia fight, obviously, because it is suspect that he is chinny now, and we don't know how he's going to look after that damage that he took. I will say this, though. If Arnold Barboza and Teofimo Lopez can't come to terms, give him Jose Valenzuela, because I'd rather see that than a rematch with him and Pitbull Cruz. That's just my opinion. I think that's a big fight. I think you can do it on the West Coast, and they're both Mexican Americans. Like, you cannot go wrong with that fight, in my opinion. And I think it would be pretty entertaining when you think stylistically. Bryan, should we get to some comments before we
Yes,
go on to Jose
please.
Ramirez? Because I still think we need to talk about him really
Oh,
quickly.
you do? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, fair. Yeah, let's do some comments.
All right. I'll let you pick.
Cowboys Nation had one. I was trying to read through it because it's in all caps. Well, all caps, you got my attention. Thank y'all for channel and time. You're a boss lady.
Oh,
This
thank
this man
you.
this man says.
Cowboys Nation.
I am Bryant with a T, but typos, you know what happens. That's happened more than you think, actually. To both, why are most American boxers? Why don't they sell other than Tank? In my opinion, with all due respect. So basically, why don't American fighters sell other than Gervonta Davis? I mean, do we think Terrence Crawford sells? I mean, he I get the question though, right?
Yeah.
Like, but I would put Terrence Crawford in that category. But by and large, that is kind of an issue. I feel like Deontay Wilder was selling prior to his eventual fall off, but it's a good question, honestly.
What I actually think the biggest issue is that not every fight is a pay-per-view fight. There's only some pay-per-view fighters. Sometimes there's
Yeah.
pay-per-view fights and I'm like, why is this a pay-per-view fight? It should be for free because that's how you build. And so I think that's one of the issues. I think it's been a little bit better, but also I still think people have a problem with the fights on DAZN. I think a lot of people are like, yo, where do I find this? I got to get DAZN. I have it because in Canada, you get all this boxing, you get all of this like NFL Sunday Ticket and everything. So that's the reason why I have it for NFL Sunday Ticket. And then the boxing stuff is just an ad. But I think a lot of people don't like the fights on DAZN still. I think a lot of people hate the fact that there's pay-per-view fights that shouldn't, because there's only a few pay-per-view fighters. And as for Bud being a fighter that does sell, I think he does sell now 100%. I think after that Spence fight, people
Yeah.
hopped on that Bud train,
Yeah.
people that weren't rocking with him before. But I
Yeah.
think Bryan and I in that fight, we both picked Bud to beat Spence. Not like that
Not
though.
like that though.
No,
Yeah.
right? Like that's still one of the craziest things I've ever seen in boxing. But yeah, I think it's how promotionally they do it. And I think there were some flaws in that. And to be honest with you, the Saudi route is not going to help.
Yeah, I mean they've put on good fights, but they're not putting them on here. And like Lou DiBella's talked about this a while ago with us. It's like that's only going to do but so much. It'll put money in everybody's pockets, but what does that really do for the consumers? Especially because you're talking about American fights. You're talking about more fights that are going to be in the afternoon as opposed to the evening. You know what I mean? Like, so that's part of it too. If I give you right now, I'll give you right now the top 10 American boxers on BoxRec,
Okay.
and you could tell me how many of them sell, quote unquote. But this is a pound for pound ranking. But Tank is one, Crawford's two. This is based on BoxRec's sort of metrics. We would all put Bud number one over Tank Davis,
Yeah.
respectfully. But regardless, that part of it doesn't matter. But they're on their own tier. Third, David Benavidez.
Yes, he sells, man. And honestly, we were talking the other night, like one of our highest ranked post fight shows was because of the
Yeah,
Mexican monster,
yeah.
And I do think that fight with him and David Morrell, I cannot wait. I'm actually thinking about buying tickets and going to that fight.
I wasn't sure. The Caleb Plant fight showed me like, oh yeah, he actually is legit. And now I'm not saying all of his fights should be on pay-per-view. I think less
He's getting
boxing should
there.
be on pay-per-view, but
Yeah.
like he is a fighter when he fights, like social media is interested. Now, we'll see if it took a hit after his last performance, but there's that piece of it too. Shakur Stevenson is next. Now,
No, 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 no. Now this list is getting a little bit suspect. You know what I'm saying? Because I am not paying to go to sleep. You know what I mean? Like,
Shakur Stevenson not at that point yet. The route for him though, he has to become a villain. He has to become a villain, and you have to see him pay to see him lose. Boots Ennis, no. Devin Haney. I, it's not a total.
I don't
No.
think it's not. I think Devin has more cachet to his name than Boots and Shakur Stevenson. I'm sorry, I think
because
he does.
well, it's because of this whole circus year that he's had, right?
Yes,
So,
of
but
course.
the list is small. They have Bam Rodriguez here, who's from San Antonio, Texas. Ryan Garcia is not listed. I would throw him in there begrudgingly, but he counts. But there's not a lot. Teofimo Lopez is here, and honestly,
People
like
would argue that. People would argue,
people would argue that he doesn't because
yeah.
he should have fought Josh Taylor at Madison Square Garden, not the MSG Theater. He keeps fighting in theaters in 5,000, 6,000 seat arenas, despite the fact that he's super talented and is one of the bigger names in the sport. Like, they put him in New York and Florida all the time. Those are the two places that he claims. And, like he should be a bigger star than he is. And then you're getting to now you're getting into the danger zone. So we don't even need to continue. Keyshawn Davis, by the way, has this potential.
Yes,
I think he has
yes.
that potential, and
He's next up.
Potentially Richard Torres Jr. because it's a heavyweight.
You know who I will say, and I don't know how people will feel about this, but when the fight happens, and I do believe this fight is going to happen with Edgar Berlanga and Jaime Munguia, if Edgar Berlanga wins that fight,
He's
I'm
supposed
telling
to
you,
fight. So Jaime Munguia has a fight in Mexico coming up. I think that's at the end of the year, December,
yeah,
and that's just been announced. It's a hometown fight. We'll see if he handles business. The opponent's not as tough as his last one. Edgar Berlanga is rumored to return early next year in Puerto Rico, which I think would be smart.
yes,
And I think from there, okay,
we'll
now
see.
fight each other.
Okay, but that's the thing because like I really like Jaime Munguia. I loved his last fight. I absolutely loved it with Bazinian because like he was down in that fight, ended up winning. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
Jaime Munguia proved to me that after that Canelo fight, he learned something. We're gonna see that from Berlanga as well, hopefully in Puerto Rico. But I do believe, and I'm not saying I'm rocking with Berlanga in this fight because I think Pacheco could beat him, and I think Pacheco could beat Munguia as well. West Coast bias, whatever. But I will say if Berlanga takes that fight with Jaime Munguia and say he knocks him out, he's gonna be superstar status in boxing. And I think he'll be able to get those fights because he already has that aura of a superstar. Yeah. People love to hate him. The girls think he's cute. Yeah. You know, like the rappers, like he's got Fat Joe in his corner. Fat Joe's like beefing with boxers and stuff. Like this is really happening. This is really happening.
I think I would say the same for Jaime Munguia if he won that fight. Because there's room for like, I was gonna say there's room for maybe the next big Mexican star, but it looks like it'll still probably be even so. Like Bam Rodriguez, Diego Pacheco might have something to say about that because they're younger. But like there doesn't have to be one or two or three. Like Jaime Munguia having fought Canelo Alvarez, pretty tough. He could get in that mix too. You wanted to talk about Jose Ramirez, and then we're gonna get some comments, and then I do want to hit like a couple other things that happened on the card.
We said we were only going to be on for a half hour, guys, but we like to rock out with y'all.
Yeah.
So Bryan, I think this is a really interesting topic because we've kind of seen, I don't want to say a downward trend, but Jose Ramirez hasn't looked like the Jose Ramirez since that Josh Taylor fight. We've seen spurts of him kind of looking like himself. But today, it was a 32-year-old Jose Ramirez that didn't let his hands go enough. He couldn't cut off the ring, and he takes an L. And now he has a second loss on his record. And we're looking at it like, what does he do here? Does he move up to 147? Because I don't like him at 147. Do you?
No, and I was surprised that was brought up on the broadcast because I was like, I don't think that's the move. The move is probably just, get a couple easy wins and try again. That's really it.
I mean, listen, I think in 140 anyone can have their day. I think Teofimo Lopez and Jose Ramirez is also a good fight.
Fair, but Regis Prograis was saying like Jose Ramirez even years ago, like he was saying he didn't look that great even when he was fighting, God, I'm trying to remember who it was, but at 140, he had a fight that was on ESPN. I'm going to look this up as I'm talking, but he had a fight that was not a tremendous performance. It was Richard Commey. It was Richard Commey where I
remember that fight.
I thought he looked okay, but that was also, he had Pedraza after the layoff, which Pedraza, I thought, did pretty well in that fight. And he struggled with Rances Barthélemy, but the judges won't give Barthélemy any respect. So
Yeah, and but let's be serious here. Francis Barthélemy is a very tough fight. Like
yes,
I like don't sleep on
I
him,
was
and that was a
super
fight.
high on him at his peak.
And that was one of the fights from Jose Ramirez that I was happy he won, but I wasn't happy with his performance. So going into this Barboza fight, I was like, what Jose Ramirez are we going to get? I don't like him at 147 at all. And I don't want to see him in that division,
No,
you know?
granted, 147 is not it's not exactly murderer's row right now.
No, no, no,
Like
it's definitely not, but there's still a name in there, named Jerome Boots Ennis. And until he moves up to 154 officially, right? Because there's rumors that he might move up, all this. I still think that's Boots' division.
yeah, I would say Stanionis. He's really good too. Not a
A name
sexy
we
name at
haven't
all,
heard
but
for a little while. I think that's the thing, activity.
yeah,
Like these guys are fighting once a year. Jose does not fight often.
yeah. And then you have Brian Norman Jr., who we'll see what his next move is. But I mean, welterweight is just not great right now. So if you want to make that case, like if this is a weight cut thing, with Jose Ramirez, I'm all ears. And if he wants to try a shot at 147, like what if Jose Ramirez fights Conor Benn? Like that's not insane to me. And Conor Benn sounds like a crazy name maybe to bring up, but he's ranked number 2 according to the WBC and the WBA. Like
Well, I think they still want to give us him and Chris Eubank Jr.
Let's hit a couple other things on this card. Tevin Farmer arguably got robbed again, according to some.
Yes, I believe he did.
I thought Tevin Farmer won that fight. Like maybe I'm biased.
You gotta feel for Tevin. And he shows that he can still be dangerous in that division. And I thought he won today. And he dropped Zepeda.
That was the thing. Like, listen, the only flaw in Tevin Farmer's game in terms of boxing is his power because he has everything else. He has everything else. He does not have power. But at the same time, when he dropped Zepeda, I could not believe it. I was like,
You
what?
guys want to know something funny? I was at the gym, right? Which is why I'm like dressed like this. But I was at the gym and I'm like trying to text Bryan, like, should I make this trade in NBA fantasy? I have the zone on my phone and I'm watching the fight. And he doesn't even answer my question, like just ignores me and goes, oh my God, Zepeda just got dropped by Tevin Farmer in all capitals. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm watching right now. But do I make this trade? He still doesn't answer for like 10 minutes, right? And then I literally like hit him up again, like, yo, Fab, like, do I make this trade or not?
And
And
the
then
answer was yes.
answered, yes.
The answer was yes. Absolutely make that trade. The scorecards were 95-94, 1 to Farmer and 2 to Zepeda, so he loses by a point and he gets the knockdown, which means if he didn't get the knockdown, he would have lost a little more emphatically. That's unfortunate. I really think he did enough to win this fight. And I thought he did enough to beat Raymond Murataya. And now they're going to slide him into gatekeeper status because he's 33-7 with 8 knockouts and a draw. And honestly, like it sucks because he's 34 and I don't know what the next move is at lightweight, but he's proven to me that he could compete with this was a championship fight. It was an interim championship fight, but it was a championship fight essentially.
He won that fight.
And
And right
Shakur
now,
Stevenson's gonna fight Zepeda next, which that also sucks because
that's
Tevin Farmer.
that's why Tevin Farmer didn't win, dude. Because they want to make that fight with Zepeda and Shakur Stevenson. Like, come on, we're all boxing fans here. We've been through this. All I know is right now, Tevin Farmer and Jose Pedraza are on a truck, and they're on the same truck together, and I feel bad for them.
Yeah.
Because they're being put in this like little circle of being put in fighters that that they want to rise, and they're placing them against them, and I feel like they could easily beat anyone except for Jose Pedraza. I feel like has taken a little bit of a dip, whereas Tevin Farmer, Tevin Farmer looked good today.
Yeah, until the end. I thought he should have ended stronger. I feel like he took too many shots in the last couple rounds, but yeah, I thought Tevin Farmer should have won that fight. Okay. There's another fight I really, really, really want to touch on before we get up out of here. And if we have any comments, do leave them because we are going to wrap this up 20 something minutes after we planned. Oscar Collazo.
Oh my God.
Oh boy. Whoa, my God. It took way too long to bring this dude up, but Puerto Rican, so you already know. minimum weight champion, Southpaw. I said that he was going to be in for a fight, and beat
Dominated,
he
yo.
beat CP Freshmart's ass and stopped him in the 7th round. Oscar Collazo is a
Great
problem.
stoppage, yo.
Yes.
Great stoppage. And you know what? I think that was one of the highlights of the night.
Yeah.
And this weekend, like, let's be serious here. Your fellow Puerto Ricans, Collazo and Jake Paul, Bryan, doing it for you this weekend. Okay.
You gotta stop doing that. By the way, in terms of American boxers that sell, I mean, it's unfortunately like Jake Paul is another name that comes up in that conversation. Going back to that, but Oscar Collazo was the best in the world in his weight class. That's all I want to say. That's it. He's
And
the best in the world in his weight class.
yes. And by the way, El Gallo, Jake Paul.
Fucking guy, man.
Yo, I laughed mad hard when he was like fighting out of Puerto Rico. I was like, I'm gonna not let
You could watch
this
our
let me
segment
down.
from yesterday and our live from yesterday on it, and also I did a segment on it because I'm like, yo, like I can't. Like I'm not gonna talk about it. But Oscar Collazo's best in his weight class right now. Also, Oscar Duarte had a nice win, a unanimous decision against Akhmedov, and we were talking about that fight a little bit yesterday.
Let's go to our friend of the show here. Virgil Ortiz will be the pound for pound 154 champion. I'm bringing this up because I saw a tweet earlier that said that Virgil Ortiz will be fighting either Terrence Bud Crawford or Sebastian Fundora. And I believe that was a tweet from, was it? That was a legit tweet. I don't know if it was from Michael Benson or someone that I
Which means
saw.
Benson probably repurposed it from somebody else, which is totally fine. He's a newswire service basically on Twitter, which that's not disparaging. That's actually helpful. Because it was circulate through his feed, and then it's like, all right, cool.
I believe that's what Oscar De La Hoya was saying. Yeah.
Oscar, so take it with a grain of maybe not salt, but rice or something.
Yeah.
Because rice is at least bigger than salt. I don't know if Oscar De La Hoya is telling the truth there. I think that's just ambitious, my opinion, but we'll see. Hopefully that's the case. I hope Oscar's right because I would love to see Virgil Ortiz fight Terrence Crawford or Sebastian Fundora. Is Errol Spence gonna fight? Like, what the fuck happened to him and Sebastian Fundora? I have no idea.
If I don't like the way Spence fights in his next fight, I think he should retire.
He hasn't fought in a year and a half. Like, I
Like,
just I don't know at this
he
point.
doesn't have anything to prove, man.
By the way, the number one contender for the WBO title at 154 is Xander Zayas. Is Xander Zayas going to get his shot at Sebastian Fundora?
I would take Zayas against Fundora any day.
I don't think Zayas going to get the shot next fight. I think it's going to be another, like,
Yeah.
maybe he'll have a fight in the spring, then Puerto Rican Day Parade weekend, and then
But
after.
yo, him and Fundora, like if you think about that aspect, Puerto Rico, Mexican American, yo, that could be great numbers wise. I would eat that up. I just like rivalries.
You think Zayas wins that fight?
I do.
Okay.
I think people want Zayas to be a particular type of fighter.
Yeah.
And he dominates, but people don't appreciate the way he's dominating.
He's
and
just
everyone
a really
has
good all-around boxer. That's it.
Yeah, but people want him to be like Trinidad or Cotto, and it's like he's Xander Zayas, and he's going to be Xander Zayas, and he's going to be repping Puerto Rico. But I think we all know the best Puerto Rican fighter is Amanda Serrano right now.
Xander Zayas versus Vito Mielnicki will probably happen first, I think. Also,
I'm okay with that.
Because top rank has both of them, and I think like that's strategic. And also, you have a Puerto Rican who's made New York a second home because that's what we do. And you have Vito from Jersey, and you get Puerto Rico versus Italy. You get Puerto Rico versus Jersey in a way, New York versus Jersey, I would say. He wasn't spectacular in his last fight, which was his top rank. Was that his top rank debut? It might have been his top rank debut, actually. And it was an underwhelming majority decision against a journeyman. But hey, I think Xander fights him, and then we'll see what happens at 154.
Really quickly, Osman 3001, a friend of the show, kind of had some really good comments here back to back that I think we should get to. We got the fights we wanted from the Saudis. Bivol versus Beterbiev was amazing, but do both sell without each other? The problem with boxing is that most can't sell alone, but together they can. Osman 3001 then said Shakur versus Devin sells, Devin versus Teofimo Lopez sells, but none of them alone. I mean, when you make blockbuster fights, I think they sell. And I think people want to see that.
You know what the simple sort of response is? Like, we just need the best to fight the best. And I think we're in this era because the Saudis have basically taken over for the most part, that people think that boxing needs the Saudis to make the best fight the best, when that's never been the case. It's just people have to get in rooms and be fucking adults and actually make deals and not try to just fuck each other over and make the fights. But the Saudis have so much money that they're just able to get, like, so much money, they're just able to get it done. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? For whatever reason, that promoters and managers like didn't do this earlier. But I don't think they need the excess wealth to get it done. They just need to, like, negotiate better with each other. But I think the simple answer though is, like, yeah, if the best fight the best, it'll sell. And boxing needs more fights, like Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, like Better Biev versus Bivol, and like what we have coming up later this year at Usyk and Fury, where the
Yes.
best is fighting the best.
Yeah. And you know what? I know it has the Saudi money all over it, but maybe let's do something like they did for Bud and have it in the States instead. I'd be okay with that. Saudi money, have it in the States. I mean, maybe not do the whole spectacle of the speech in between and
The
giving away a
speech,
car,
the
and
anthem, the Hall of Fame, the Nevada Hall of Fame, or whatever it was.
I don't want to see that again. Like that was like some really
Like, yo,
weird
if you're
stuff that,
bankrolling the shit, do it in the shadows. Don't be weird about it.
yeah, maybe have like a Turk night. You know
Just
what I
act
mean?
like a
Like,
college football booster. Just stay over there.
yeah,
You
I'd
know?
stay in the shadows. Don't let us know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anyways, nonetheless, I think we've covered everything. If you're watching this after, leave your comments because we are going to see them. Also, hit that like and subscribe button, guys, because that does help the channel grow. We're almost at 2,000. So, share this with your friends, tell them to subscribe. And thank you so much for rocking out with us on the post fight show for the last 2 nights. We are going to have a live show next week, but, a post fight show to come early December. Bryan, any final thoughts before we get up out of here?
I have no idea what the hell we're going to talk about this week. So hopefully we get a fight announcement.
All right, good night, y'all.